Helen Clark's hope of becoming the first female leader of the United Nations has been dashed, but the government says it has no regrets about backing her candidacy, with the Prime Minister John Key saying she may have fallen victim to a behind-the-scenes deal. The former Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Guterres was the clear winner in the UN Security Council's 6th straw poll, which was colour-coded for the first time to distinguish the ballots of the influential permanent 5 members. Mr Guterres is expected to be formally recommended to the UN General Assembly for election by the Security Council later today. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
The results of the 6th secret ballot spelled the end of Helen Clark's bid to replace Ban Ki-moon as the next UN Secretary-General. Antonio Guterres was the clear favourite, with none of the 5 Security Council members with the power of veto voting against him. But 3 of them voted against Ms Clark. The Prime Minister John Key says UN politics and deal-making worked against her.
In the case of the Russians, to be fair to them, they were upfront the whole way through and basically said they were going to, vote against anyone that wasn't either European or Eastern European. The French always veto a non-French speaker, so you probably understand that. Who the third voter is, you can never be 100% sure. But I think in the end, bluntly, I think the Americans, the Brits and the Russians did a deal, compromised on a European candidate and moved forward.
A UN analyst and blogger says Helen Clark never really looked like she had a shot. Mark Goldberg is the author of the United Nations Dispatch blog. He says Mr Guterres had been the front-runner from the start, which did not bode well for Ms Clark.
She never placed very highly in any of the straw polls. She was always in the middle or towards the bottom of the pack. She's demonstrated herself to be an able leader of an important UN agency, just as Antonio Guterres was an able leader of an important UN agency. However, for reasons that are beyond ours to divine, the Security Council did not approve her candidacy.
John Key also says the fact Ms Clark was seen as a reformer did not help her cause. The Labour leader Andrew Little agrees.
The P5 typically look for someone who is more secretary, less general. They don't want somebody who is anything other than somewhat pliable. And I think Helen Clark was seen as somebody who, was determined, an independent thinker, perhaps would have challenged a bit too much the orthodoxies that many of those diplomats in the UN have lived by.
But Mark Goldberg says that would not have necessarily worked against her.
She has a demonstrated record of reform in the United Nations Development Program, and those reforms were largely celebrated by many members of the Security Council, like the United States, but somewhat controversial inside the halls of the UN. So I would actually think that her reform-mindedness worked in her favour.
In a statement, Helen Clark has congratulated Mr Guterres, saying she wishes him every success and that she believes he has the right mix of knowledge and experience to lead the United Nations well. She says she met the former UN refugee chief when they were both prime ministers and have worked together as heads of UN agencies in recent years. And it seems there are no regrets from the New Zealand government about throwing its weight behind Helen Clark's bid, with lobbying and staffing support, despite the fact it was ultimately unsuccessful. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.